Tonight, in Democracy 20, Africa's economic juggernaut making huge strides since 1994.
10 years of South Africa post-1994 was about promoting social capital. And that social capital paid off. We achieved a great deal.
Firing up South Africa's huge coal reserves.
We are currently building the first city since 1994. That is the first democratic city. We're going to be housing not less than 5,000 housing units.
And on this day 20 years ago, a declaration of a state of emergency on the eve of a historical meeting between King Goodwill Zwelithini, ANC President Nelson Mandela, President F.W. de Klerk, and Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Brings back memories indeed. And good evening, welcome to Democracy 20, a special pre-election show in which we celebrate the benefits and progress of 20 years of democracy in our country. My name is Tabi Sositole. Now, in today's show, the spotlight is on the strides made by the South African economy, since 1994. We also touch on a rather thorny issue, Eskom's plans to tackle the country's power crisis. The South African economy is greatly modernized and well integrated with the rest of the world. Growth rates have increased steadily over the years, with more people participating in the economy than was the case before 1994. But despite this progress, many South Africans still feel more needs to be done to harness the huge potential of the local economy.
The first democratic government in 1994 inherited a depleted economy obliterated by years of international sanctions. The economy was largely supported by government subsidies in key sectors such as agriculture. Competition was virtually non-existent and investor confidence was at its lowest level. A slow and systematic approach was needed to transform and open up the economy to increase growth levels from below 1% at the time.
It was an economy that was saddled by a government, by a national treasury that was indebted, by a central bank, South African Reserve Bank, that had a liability of close on to $23 billion, never mind having foreign reserves. It was an economy that, from a productivity point of view, was not at par with the global economy, could not compete, and its technology was behind the trend.
From the Reconstruction and Development Program through to GEAR, ASGISA and the current National Development Program, government's economic policy has remained consistently geared towards reducing poverty and inequality over the 20-year period. Releasing its 20-year review earlier this month, the government said on average the economy grew at 3.2% between 1994 and 2012. Its fastest expansion was between 1999 and 2007, with growth levels reaching a high of nearly 6% in 2006. The review shows that growth over the last 20 years was accompanied by an employment increase of almost 6 million people. To many, this indicates that the benefit of the steady growth has not filtered through to all South Africans.
The growing dualness of our economy. So on the one side, you've got a formal sector, big tax base, receiving good service delivery, and the other side, a large unemployed group of people living predominantly in shall we say, worser conditions, not living up to, shall we say, not striving towards greater equality, but actually striving away from it, reflected in the degree of unemployment that we have.
Government's push to narrow this gap led to policies such as the Black Economic Empowerment and Affirmative Action. BEE has resulted in a large number of black people, including politicians, venturing into the business world.
And what does that do for the economy? It grows the economy. You've got a lot of players that have got in and take advantage of the situation, build businesses, and then, of course, the government became the enabler, or they made the playing fields to be equal.
But just what do ordinary South Africans think about the performance of the local economy over the last 20 years?
Plain and simple, no growth. as much as, yes, we have advanced from 20 years ago, had we probably instilled the culture of entrepreneurship 20 years ago, when I was around 20, 24, 25 years old, I probably would have been much more advanced than I am currently.
Our standard of living might have gotten better, but the cost of it is extremely high. So to be able to uphold that and maintain that at the moment is very difficult.
Maybe from suburbs and other parts of the country, economy has improved. But go back down to where the majority of the people come from. I think economy there hasn't really made any big difference.
I think in this country, the economy is only beneficial to the fat cats of the country, like the government and people who own businesses, like the poor people. Like poverty is so out of control in this country.
Many say the last 20 years has provided plenty of lessons that can help propel the economy to even higher levels in the next 2 decades.
The first lesson is that societies can achieve better development, faster growth, when they promote social capital, when they create trust, when they create accountability of all stakeholders about the issues of the society. And this is what we did in South Africa for the first 10 years. The 10 years of South Africa post-1994 was about promoting social capital. And that social capital paid off. We achieved a great deal. What internationally was regarded as impossible to achieve, South Africa achieved.
From a business point of view, in these 20 years, the opportunity that is missed, and we have to do it going forward, is to develop sustainable SMMEs. Everybody talks about sustainable SMMEs, but I believe we haven't had a clear-cut plan to create those sustainable SMMEs.
The country's failing infrastructure is also cited as among the factors that need urgent attention to remove constraints to growth. Relations between government, labor and business also need to be reviewed if the economy is to perform to its potential going forward. Liuta Motlogelwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, please remember there are various ways in which you at home can participate in tonight's program. You can send us your emails, this to elections@sabc.co.za, or you can send SMSs to 33726. Begin your message, with the word vote, and remember your SMSs will cost you R1.50 each. That is 33726. For tweets, use the hashtag SABC Elections, and you can also find us on our Facebook page at SABC News Online. Send us all your comments and views. We will try and get through them in as far as the show is concerned, and have some interaction with our guests as well in that regard. Now, the recent power sharing imposed by Eskom due to insufficient production will still be fresh in the memory of many. Businesses, large and small, suffered losses, and fingers were pointed at the parastatal for poor maintenance, planning and delays in the development of a new power station. In the light of the coming elections, the relevant government ministers were quick to defend Eskom, saying a delicate electrical system was being managed. Management said load shedding was implemented to prevent a total blackout that would have been devastating for the economy.
The Limpopo town of Lephalale, formerly Alice Harras, is the home to one of Eskom's new mega power stations, Medupi. A third is being planned. The town is situated on massive coal reserves and is among the biggest electricity suppliers to the country. Medupi will be the largest coal-fired dry-cooled power station in the world. Once it comes on stream, another 4,800 megawatts of power will be added to the national power grid. There is enough coal for the next 300 years. This all bodes well for future economic prospects. Lephalale, formerly Alice Harras, is one of the fastest growing towns in South Africa and is destined to become the first new South African city since 1994.
The town has grown almost fourfold. Today we're sitting with a population of almost 180,000 people and still growing. The capital investment at the moment from the municipal side and from government is in excess of 1.5 billion. That is the water, stormwater, roads, sanitation system.
The economy at Lephalale is based on electricity generation thanks to the current largest direct dry cooling power station in the world, Matimba, and the soon to be completed Medupi that will usurp that title. But a secondary supporting economy has also blossomed. This includes the construction of 5,000 new residential units, schools, health facilities, police stations and shopping centres, all necessary to support the 18,000 people employed to build Medupi. The boom also extended to some of the villages in the surrounding area where many workers lived. But construction work on the 170 billion rand power station is nearing completion, and the workforce has already been scaled down to 13,000. Some fear that the economic bubble at the town will eventually burst when the builders leave, but others disagree.
Most of people, they will be unemployed.
I think the economy is going to stay the same, even if the contractors leave.
Businessmen who have invested large amounts at Lephalale say the boom is here to stay.
You must remember that these people have been trained on Medupi. So with the new mines opening, they will be able to get new jobs at the mines, but being trained, they will be able to find other jobs elsewhere in South Africa.
The municipality also believes in the future and has already started planning for the next 20 years.
We are currently building the first city since 1994. That is the first democratic city. We're going to be housing not less than 5,000 housing units. And that is to create an economy. We are looking at another 6 mines opening very shortly. Once the water pipeline has been completed, we are busy with what we call the Mekwap 2 pipeline, which is an investment by government, about 9.5 billion rand.
Philip van der Walt, SABC News, Lephalale.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Liftoff, the first South African in space. The World Cup goes to South Africa.
The new Lufthansa, designed to celebrate 20 years of freedom and the next generation of dreamers.
Zoom into Africa. This is Sierra Leone. The president is Mr. Ernest Bai Koroma. Sierra Leone got independent from the United Kingdom on 27 April in 1961. The population is more than 6 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Leone.
Well, welcome back. You're still watching Democracy20, a special pre-election show on the accomplishments of 20 years of democracy in the country. Now, joining us in studio is Dr. Azar Jammine, Chief Economist at Econometrics. Good evening, Dr. Jammine.
And Good evening, Tabisa.
Joining us right here on, well, Democracy20 as we head. Economy, that's what we're discussing today. A huge, diverse kind of topic. There's so many ways to take this one forward. But the past 20 years, what has democracy meant for the South African economy overall?
The most important change, of course, occurred after 1994. In the preceding decade and a half, this country was immersed in a dismal economic performance, growing by less than 1% per year. What democracy meant was that sanctions were abolished. South Africa finally, after many decades, was reintegrated into the global economy. And this was at a time when the global economy actually started taking off. And so South Africa's economy was able to benefit somewhat from the higher growth rate that we saw overseas. And I saw earlier you showed a graph of South Africa's historical GDP growth rate. Well, since 1992, if you superimpose that on the world economic growth, you'll see a massive correlation between the two.
I mean, if you look back at South Africa pre-94, an economic powerhouse, one compares the rand to the dollar back then. Sometimes, I remember when I was growing up, and one would say the rand was actually stronger than the dollar at one stage, as far as South African history is concerned.
Yes, but you've got to bear in mind that it was also in part artificial. There were very strict exchange controls in place. You were not allowed to take any money, very little money abroad. I was a student abroad, and I was limited to 2,000 rand a month to survive at that time. So thank goodness the currency was strong at the time.
What has been the greatest challenges thus far since coming out, since 94 basically?
The biggest challenge is one of ideology. On the one hand, many would argue that South Africa has needed to run a market-oriented economy, and critics will say that it has never really loosened up sufficiently to generate the kind of economic growth that many what are now called neoliberals would argue was required to get to 5%, 6%, 7% growth. On the other hand, there's been an element of ideology that has wanted to see government getting more and more involved in the economy, that see business as being the bad guy and exploitative of the people.
But it's always a balancing act, isn't it?
So it's been a balancing act, and that's why I think, in a way, until recently, we've done pretty well, because we have not been able to shoot the lights out. We have not been able to achieve our full potential, but at the same time, we have not allowed the wheels to fall off completely.
Now, before we run out of time, because when you have fun, run out of time, looking ahead, what needs to be done to reinvigorate, a stalling economy, one would say? I mean, we speak of growth, but, it varies. One year you have a good year, then it kind of stalls so far.
Well, the first thing we need is a decent global economic growth, and I'm not so sure that we will necessarily get that in the fallout from the global financial crisis. The second thing is we've already got a plan, the National Development Plan, which addresses a lot of the issues that really need to be addressed, such as lack of education, better industrial relations, generation of small business activity, more infrastructural development, and more cooperation and working together between the public sector and the private sector. At the moment, there is a lack of trust, and that is holding back this economy.
We speak of the NDP and speak of all this it offers us. The real question, implementation-wise, do we have the stomach to actually go through and implement some of those?
Well, the problem is that some of the tenets of the NDP are opposed by people who feel that they have vested interests and they might lose out.
Because that's the question. I mean, economics itself says, as much as we'd like to give, but, we also have an obligation to the economy as well.
Well, if you really want to get the thing going, we need to work together as a country. At the moment, unfortunately, one senses that we're a divided society in terms of whether or not to go with the NDP. And I would love to see us just being totally patriotic in every segment of society, saying, this is where we want to go, and let's go for it. We're not there yet.
Patriotism, elections coming up, where do we see things going? Will we see change, if any, come off the elections, as far as the economy is concerned?
It's quite possible that we may find there's been a lot of ructions at the moment between even elements within the ruling party, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we do see some changes after the elections, which may actually, it can either lead us downhill or uphill, and let's hope it's uphill.
Of course, nobody wants downhill, is it? Although even the markets are concerned, you always want things to be pointing up.
That's right.
Thank you very much. That is Dr. Azza Jameen, Chief Economist at Econometrics, speaking to us right here on Democracy 20. As you said, our live show leading up to elections, Democracy 20. Today we're speaking about economics and what it has done as far as the country is concerned. Thank you very much for your SMSs and emails, tweets, and your Facebook messages. We know a couple have come through, so let's take a quick look at some of those messages. We'll start off, I think, with Facebook messages. This one coming up right now, it says, well, I think it's from Moltlapa. Joseph says, I don't think we've done enough up to so far. People are still suffering. There are still a lot of strikes, which shows that we are still far from satisfactory. Joseph Ramutla from Bochum sending us that message. Another one from Solomon Sitole. No relative of mine, I promise you, but he is a Sitole nonetheless. Petrol price is driving me mad, he says. I think we all complain about that one. Another one from Tsepo Piri saying, until a good balance of capitalism and socialism is found, this country is heading for a disastrous fall. Interesting one there, Dr. Azza Jameen. Anyway, after the break, we'll be looking back at this day 20 years ago when the country held its breath before a historical four-way meeting. Stay with us right here in Democracy 20.
Your World provides trusted world, continent, and local stories. We deliver breaking news from across the globe and information on the latest top stories on business, technology, politics, and sport. Analysis of the big global business and economic issues as they affect consumers and investors. Make sure you don't miss Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight. We keep the nation fully informed.
The JSE, which didn't trade yesterday, opened quite strongly today and continued to trade in that fashion, almost as if it was playing catch-up.
I think that the markets have been primarily moved by the amount of liquidity which has consecutively been added or subtracted from the markets.
Ireland's official exit from its EU-IMF bailout has restored national pride.
The path that has been followed for the past 3 years puts us in a position where we can now be optimistic for our country's future.
That's News at 1, daily at 1 p.m. on SABC News.
You're watching Democracy 20. On this day, 20 years ago, the declaration of a state of emergency in KwaZulu-Natal was welcomed by the ANC, but rejected by the former KwaZulu government then. It cast a shadow on the scheduled meeting between King Goodwill Zwelithini, Mr. Nelson Mandela, the then ANC President, State President F.W. de Klerk, as well as Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. SABC TV News, then political reporter Linda van Tilburg, filed this report on the 31st of March, 1994.
The situation in KwaZulu-Natal has been deteriorating for some time. Violence has escalated, and it has become increasingly clear that the chances of free political activity in the area is slim. A series of events has increased tension between the ANC and the IFP. The venues of two ANC rallies in Natal at Umlazi and KwaMashu were hijacked by IFP supporters, and a meeting between King Goodwill Zwelithini and ANC President Nelson Mandela was cancelled because Mr. Mandela felt unsafe in the province. Efforts by the Independent Electoral Commission to secure an undertaking from Chief Minister Mangosuthu Buthelezi that he would ensure free political activity failed, and this set the scene for Monday's clash between the ANC and the IFP in Johannesburg. This week's events, which include a TEC decision to recommend a state of emergency in KwaZulu-Natal and a declaration by Chief Buthelezi that Monday's events were the start of the final battle between the ANC and the Zulu nation, seem to have been the last straw that pushed President de Klerk towards today's decision. Mr. de Klerk said here at the Union Buildings this morning that a state of emergency had been declared in KwaZulu-Natal because he believed the situation in that province could not be controlled in any other way. This morning, he phoned KwaZulu Chief Minister Mangosuthu Buthelezi and ANC President Nelson Mandela to inform them about his decision. At the news conference, Mr. de Klerk said the decision to declare a state of emergency had not been easy.
After being briefed by the intelligence establishment and security advisors, I am of the opinion that circumstances have arisen within the province of Natal, including the self-governing area of KwaZulu, situated in the province of Natal, which seriously threaten the safety of the public and the maintenance of public order, and that the ordinary law of the land is inadequate to enable the government to ensure the safety of the public and to maintain public order.
He stressed that he had not been ordered to do so by any outside party. It was based on advice from security experts. Mr. de Klerk stressed that the state of emergency was not aimed at destabilizing the KwaZulu government.
This is not aimed at the KwaZulu government. It is not aimed at the position of the Chief Minister. It is not aimed to have any effect on the position of the King. In fact, it will help to protect the KwaZulu government against any threats.
The president said he believed a state of emergency was compatible with the holding of free and fair elections.
Yes, because free political activity will be allowed. Meetings as a right can be held.
Mr. de Klerk expressed the hope that the declaration would not have an adverse influence on the planned summit between him, Mr. Mandela, Dr. Buthelezi and Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. The declaration of a state of emergency means that security force numbers will be increased in the area and that their powers will be extended. This could include detention without trial and the right to seize weapons and documents. Marches will be strictly controlled and prior notice for public gatherings will have to be given. In Durban, Chief Buthelezi reacted with shock to Mr. de Klerk's announcement.
How do you conduct an election under a state of emergency? What kind of election is that under a state of emergency? What kind of election can you hold with troops, holding guns, at the polling booths? I mean, everything that is happening now, which I deprecate, but everything that has happened completely justifies our stand and vindicates us as far as our attitude is concerned.
Times indeed, if you look at all the pizzazz and the snares of the politicians and the eyewear and the hair as well from Linda and Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And anyway, that's where we end off tonight's show, Democracy 20. Catch us again tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on SABC 3 and SABC News Channel 404 at 6:30 Central African Time. The English news follows at 7 o'clock. Take care.